How do I raise teenagers and little ones and homeschool them all? Part of my motivation for getting onto YouTube was that I wasn't really seeing anybody in my situation. We have what we call our bigs and our littles. So I have my big kids who are like 12 and up, 12, 15, 17, and I have my littles and they're 8 and 6 and 4. And I've been trying to find a way to make our days flow better where I felt like not all of my attention was going to my littles and I wasn't feeling like the big kids were having too much responsibility that they couldn't explore their own interests. And I'm trying to make that balance work in our home. So if any of you are in that situation, I'm not seeing a lot of that on YouTube. I see a lot of people talking about raising teens. I see a lot of people talking about establishing their homeschool with their littles. And I'm just like, but I have both. I don't know how to do either. I just kind of felt like now is the time to kind of reevaluate, see where we're at, see what's been happening, and see what we need to change. That's a big one. So a little story time. We moved into this house about 6 years ago when I was about 10 months pregnant with baby number 5. We moved in and exactly 1 week later, baby number 5 was born. And then exactly 3 weeks later, so exactly a month from the day we bought the house, our chimney was struck by lightning. Luckily, it didn't do a bunch of damage on the inside. In fact, baby and I were in the recliner right next to the fireplace when it happened. And I screamed, I jumped up. I didn't know what had happened. And it wasn't until the next morning we went outside and we saw bricks just strewn across our backyard and the patio roof was caved in and we realized what happened. So needless to say, that was a lot. We spent a long time just kind of rebuilding that and moving in and unpacking. That takes a while anyway. And then adjusting to new baby, that takes a while. And baby number 5 was hard. She was my hardest baby. She would scream anytime anybody other than myself or my oldest tried to hold her. Like not even dad could hold her. She was probably 10 months old before dad could hold her without her screaming. We finally felt like we were no longer drowning, right? Have y'all seen the Jim Gaffigan thing where they're like, how do you do it with 4 kids? And he's like, well, imagine that you're drowning and someone hands you a baby. that was me. But we started to swim and then we started to do really well. And then we decided, I don't think we're done. We felt like we had another kiddo that needed to join our family. So we have baby number 6 and he is 4. So it's been about 6 years of us just kind of existing in our homeschool, if that makes sense. I'm sure if you're a homeschool parent, you've homeschooled for a while, you kind of understand. Fallen into a routine that works, but I don't think it's really what we want. And I don't really think it's where my kids need to be. And I don't think it's how my kids are going to thrive. So that's where I'm at. I have fallen in love with the Charlotte Mason philosophy. And I'm very clear about her philosophy versus curriculum and her timetables and how she talked about teaching. In fact, I am not really great with routines. And I do better when we mix things up and do things differently. So her, the homeschool world, Charlotte Mason, curriculum and how to do things doesn't really bring me joy. But her philosophy is how she talks about children, how she talks about, what we want to introduce to our children and that they're whole persons and that they have their own ideas. It's not our job just deposit information into their brain. I love it. I've come across the Commonplace podcast with Autumn Kern, which if you haven't listened to it and if you're even just a tiny bit interested in Charlotte Mason, I highly recommend it. I have been addicted. In season 2, she goes over all of the Charlotte Mason principles. And she even did, so she has her podcast and then she did YouTube video for each principle. She would do a YouTube video to go along with it and correspond with it. So I love the way that Autumn explores the principles and I love the way she explains them. And she puts them in a way that our modern brains can understand and a way that we can implement them and the practices into our home. I feel like I'm having to take our current environment, which is not super Charlotte Mason friendly, and I'm trying to flip it but in a way that my kids don't resist it too much, right? Like if I try to be like, we are going to do all of these lovely things and wear linen and light candles, and my kids are gonna be like, Mom, you're insane, stop it, right? Especially if my older teenagers resist it, my little ones are gonna be like, this is dumb. So that's one hand. On the other hand, I also just came across, what is her name? Fun Schooling with Sarah Janice Brown. And I love what she has to say too. And I don't really see how the two could connect, but I get this tiny little inkling, tiny, of like, this could work. It could happen. So her idea is that your kids can pursue learning through their interests. And she said something like, why are we going to make them stop pursuing their passions in order to make sure that they complete all of these subjects? So she talks about how, why are we waiting until our kids are in college to pursue their interests or find out what they're interested in? Like, why can't they do that now while they're in our homes, while we're here to support them and guide them? And I love that. And that's why I say I love the Charlotte Mason philosophy of setting up an environment of education, just educating our children in truth, goodness, and beauty. All that's wonderful. We can educate our kids in those things. And I've always been adamant about my kids learning at least reading and writing and math. We live in Texas. There's no reporting, there's no testing, so we really have freedom to do what we want. But I want my children to be able to read really well and comprehend what they've read. I want them to be able to write. That's important. And then math, because as much as people hate learning math, it is necessary. You have to know some kind of math for life. But other than that, I just kind of let my children explore. And if there's something they really want to do, we try to help them and be able to do that. But I'm just trying to allow my kids room, especially my teenagers, room to explore and prepare for life outside of my home, which isn't necessarily college, right? And I'm trying to bring up my younger children in a way that I think is beautiful. I want to spark their love of all the God-given things we have, beautiful art and music and nature, which that's where Charlotte Mason comes in. I'm like, how do I I can see bringing in Charlotte Mason to my littles, but then my teenagers who aren't used to that, like how to bring them into that as well. How do I spark their interest in those kind of things, but also allow them space to pursue their passions and just explore what they're interested in? And how do I do this? So I would love if you're a mom that has olders and littles, like, how do you do it? Especially homeschool moms. How did you do it? Please, if you are a mom in a similar situation, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave it down in the comments below.